likely is happening and is going to happen continually in the future is fraudsters are going to basically leverage AI to make more and more convincing applications to commit acts of fraud, and then
Yeah.
they're going to use they're going to feed their successful fraud attempts back into their algorithms to make them even better. And so that's going to be like this circle. And so we have to come up with this counter circle to basically counteract that.
Hello and welcome back to Swift Start Go, the show where we talk all things AI and tech. Today I have a really special guest for you guys who I think you're absolutely going to love. And I think we're going to be digging deep into AI and fraud and how to combat that, which I'm really excited about. Can everybody quickly welcome Nick Capaldini? Okay, hang on. Is it Nick Capaldini?
Yes, it's Capaldini. Yes.
Capaldini. Okay, I didn't want to say it incorrectly. That's Italian, isn't it?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to Nick Cap. Welcome to Nick Cap. We're gonna have to keep this in, aren't we? Okay. Welcome, Nick Capaldini.
Yes.
I don't think that was right. Welcome, Nick. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a great Friday.
It's a great Friday. Well, Nick, could you quickly introduce yourself and maybe pronounce your last name correctly, so that people, if they do need to meet you in real life, they know how to say your name and not how I'm just butchering it here on this show today.
Yes, my name is Nick Capaldini. Yes, I'm Italian. Yes, my family are Italian immigrants, so yes. Um, my background is kind of an interesting one. I actually did my undergrad in product design at Oregon. I really thought I'd be a shoe designer at Nike. That's what all my friends did, but
Ooh.
had a change of heart during school when I did a hackathon there. Got really interested in emerging technology, then ended up moving to Austin, working for the Department of Defense around drone related projects, and then ended up getting a master's in applied data science through the University of Michigan. And so that got me really interested. Um, that kind of gave me the skill set to be a professional data scientist. And then right after graduation, I ended up going and working at a company called LexisNexis, where I built fraud detection models. So models to detect credit fraud, people basically misrepresenting themselves to try to get approved for loans when they were not with the best of intentions, we'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you doing now? What are you
Yeah,
working on these days?
right now, I am a data science consultant at a consulting firm called Ride the Next Wave that kind of does unconsulting, so not kind of the formal, kind of tight-knit consulting process where it's like, here's what we're going to build for you. Here's this thing you want. We're going to build exactly what you want as you described it. It's more kind of working with clients to figure out, really dive into what their problems are and how emerging technologies like data science, artificial intelligence can be leveraged to solve their problems.
Yeah, very cool. And that who's on the team there? Because I believe I believe a certain mutual friend of ours is on
Yes,
the team.
yes.
So
So
Jihan.
yes, Jihan is one of the big guys there. He does a lot of finding new clients and um, closing deals and things of that nature. It was originally founded by Shailesh, who's kind of the head of it, and has a lot of the original clients and has kind of built it up. But I've joined recently to help them with um, the data science side, as they were finding that a lot of the problems that companies were facing, um, some of the best ways to solve their problems was using data science and using
Yeah.
artificial intelligence.
Well, I've been hearing that pretty consistently. I mean, even when I was at Datavolo this past
Mhm.
summer, the number one issue that seemed to be preventing, especially big enterprise organizations, from actually implementing any AI projects was just not having clean data or just not
Mhm.
having their data in order at all, whether structured or unstructured.
Mhm.
So is that what you're seeing as well at this point?
Yes, I would say kind of every step of the way. There's some that just don't have data organized. It's all just in a Excel sheet or a Google sheet. There's some that are a little further. They have it organized in a way that they can that they have it somewhere. It's in a database and it's roughly organized, but they don't know how to actually turn that into something useful that can benefit their company and help them grow, help them make more profit, help them have a better experience for their customers, things like that.
Yeah. I always find it really funny when I talk to executives who are like, yeah, let's do AI. And then you talk to them about like what they want to do. And then you look at like go behind the curtain and you pull it back. And it's like, bro, we can't even get started. Like
Exactly.
we're not even close to there yet. I wonder, like how much of this is how widespread is this? Because it seems like it's just everywhere. Um, but I also wonder, are there clients who are really killing it, who are like ahead of the game and whatnot? Or like, are you fine? Is it everybody? Is it 75%? Is it 50? Is it 20? Like, what's going on here?
In terms of who's adapting different AI or who's in terms of development,
I think like data, like people who have clean data who are actually able to like start working on the AI projects versus people who are, maybe thinking about it but aren't even close to really implementing anything.
I would say a lot of the clients we tend to engage with are kind of right in that sweet spot of they usually have some data available
Yeah.
and or they have um, like data that's able to that we can convert relatively easily into something useful. But oftentimes that data isn't necessarily complete.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily include everything that they would want to solve their problem, and they don't even know how to begin to actually leverage it in terms of like converting it into a format that can be used to build a solution or like deploying that solution, making sure that anything they built is actually working, all those kind of small steps they need some help with.
This show has been brought to you by Cirrus North. Does your organization need a better partner for cloud, DevOps, security, and compliance? Cirrus North is a team of software professionals with a passion for cloud solutions, DevOps, automation, Kubernetes, and streamlining complex business problems. They are 100% US based in Minnesota and Chicago, have deep experience supporting mission critical technology operations in highly regulated environments, and have delivered success for startups and for companies on the Fortune 5. Interested? Reach out to the team at cirrusnorth.io. That's cirrusnorth.io. Thanks, Cirrus North.
I know you can't give us specifics about clients. What are the projects that you're noticing that are having the types of projects that are having the biggest amount of impact for your clients that you guys are working with Ride the Wave? And are there any common themes of projects that like really seem to be helping businesses once they've gone through all of the legwork of getting through all of this data and actually starting to implement some AI projects?
So what I would say is kind of the big thing right now that a lot of companies are looking at are generative AI and some type of prediction or recommendation. Those are kind of the two buckets that most fall into, or they use a combination of those two things. So they have a process that um, currently is being done by a bunch of staff, and instead of using staff, they say, okay, I think it'll be more efficient to have a chatbot do this, or have automatically written letters do this, like automatic emailing do this. So leveraging generative AI to automate a task is a big thing that a lot of different clients we've talked to have been exploring in different areas. And then the other one I would say are generating predictions for and recommendations for clients. So it could be an example that's not our client would be a bidding site. So let's say you have a bidding site like eBay where you're trying to bid for an item. One product could be a recommendation on what should your starting bid be for that item. That's the type of things they're looking for. A lot of clients are saying that their customers are interested in getting useful recommendations to help them um, useful recommendations within their products that help them um, make the best use of them, and they have data available from the clients to make something like that, or big parts of data to make something like that. But in terms of actually creating that, developing it, proving that it works, and deploying it, that's where they're missing a lot.
Interesting. So basically using AI to take a look at all the data that they have and make better decisions for moving forward. That's what you're saying is been an interesting use.
Yes, I would say helping customers make better decisions.
Gotcha. Okay. So, because I immediately jumped into like sales funnels and I was
Mhm,
thinking, oh, like helping you figure out how to negotiate with a particular client, like whether to, be a bit more aggressive and try to like do a higher rate versus a lower rate.
mm,
That sounds to me very interesting. I wonder if people are using that at all.
mm,
Maybe using I would think a strategy for that would be taking the like call transcribers, the notes things, and
mm,
then using that, and you can try to see if there's any patterns over companies that are more likely to say yes to like a more aggressive sales pitch
mm,
versus maybe one that's like a little bit more muted. I
mm.
wonder if there's any cool data in there.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You're on the right track. Those are the
Yeah.
type of things for sure.
Very cool. I hadn't thought of that one. Awesome. Look at us coming up with ideas, Nick. We're out of control. Jihan would be so proud. And Jihan, in case our audience doesn't know, a lot of our audience is in Minnesota, but not everybody is. Jihan is the executive director of Beta, so aka my old boss when I was running Twin Cities Startup Week a couple of years ago. And Beta is the largest startup accelerator here in the state of Minnesota. And also, he just posts on LinkedIn entirely too much. So, would you agree, Nick? Entirely too many times a day.
There are a lot of posts.
It's
Whenever I go on LinkedIn, I check it, and like half of the updates in my feed are just Siak posts.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing is like I post on LinkedIn a lot, and people tell me, "Oh, like you post all the time," and I'm like, every once in a while, I will go on LinkedIn several times a day, and I will see that Gian's made like 10 posts in one day, and
Yeah,
I don't quite understand what's happening.
yeah.
Oh my god, just such a super promoter. Anyways, we love Jihan, so but I figured we should give that audience that clarity in case they know or don't know what on earth we're talking about and wondering why we're goofing off so much. All right. Well, it sounds like you've spent a lot of time when working on AI and machine learning when it comes to fraud detection. And this is kind of what I think the meat of our conversation today is going to be about. So I'm curious, can you explain to us a little bit what you've done in the past when it comes to AI machine learning fraud detection? And then we can go from there and figure out what's going to be coming in the future.
Yeah, I'll start with maybe the problem first. That tends to be good.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of companies out there that are giving out credit cards or giving out loans, and oftentimes they have thousands of applicants that apply to get these loans. And not all of them have the best of intentions,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And so a lot of their ability to give out those loans is their ability to make a profit, to to be manage their money well. And if you have a huge portion of people you're giving out loans never paying it back, or just taking the money and running, then that can really negatively affect a business. And so the problem a lot of these companies end up trying to figure out is, okay, I have 100 people applying for this loan. I only have enough time and resources to go through three of these applications. What are the three I should go to
Yeah.
first, and why? And that's kind of what the models I built were focused on, figuring out using historical data, what are the three you should be focusing on and why, and
Mhm.
building out systems to do that.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I actually have a little bit of I have a little bit of experience with trying to detect credit card fraud, and
Mm,
so I used to work for a grocery delivery at Mercado, and we had a situation very early on while I was there. It was the very beginning of the pandemic. I was their very first COVID
mm,
hire, and in the first 3 months of the pandemic, we actually scaled 10,000% year over year in the first 3 months, which was
mm,
absolutely absurd. And I was in client relations there. I was answering the phones there. It was a really crazy time. And I ended up getting all of these phone calls from all of our liquor stores
mm,
insisting that nearly all of the orders that they were getting were from fraudulent credit cards.
mm, mhm,
And so listen, I was getting yelled at multiple times a day, and I was like, I am fixing this problem. And it was funny because didn't want I like talked to my bosses about it, and they're like, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for this. And I'm like, well, I think this could be a pretty big problem. Like, people are screaming at me about it, we should maybe do
Hmm.
something about it. And I ended up teaming with a few of the guys on the data analytics team. We figured out, how we built like a tracking system to basically identify what types of accounts were statistically most likely to be,
Hmm.
using a stolen credit card number,
Okay.
and or like what were specific items like toilet paper that were
Hmm.
or ice cream that were being ordered en masse,
Hmm.
that were primarily the work of a stolen credit card and somebody who was hoping to resell those items for a large profit. And once we put all of that in place, ended up discovering that it was a pretty large amount of our orders that were coming in the very beginning of the pandemic were all
Hmm.
from fraudulent credit cards. And so that's part of the reason I don't know, I'm just excited to learn more about this.
No, it no. What you said is really accurate. There's a lot of fraud going around. I think that was the biggest surprise for me. I'm a very innocent soul, and so going into this, I'm like, who does fraud? Who would steal $10,000? And it's like
Yeah.
apparently a lot of people. That's kind of the lesson. And so it's an
Honestly,
interesting role.
yeah.
Um,
It's interesting. Do you think it's a lot of people, or do you think it's a small group of people who are doing this in a wide variety of ways? Because that's what I wondered when I was at Mercado was, I think I don't want to say how many orders it was, and have it recorded onto the internet, but I know it was a pretty large amount of orders that we were getting that were all with these stolen credit cards. But I'm curious, how many actors are typically at play when that happens? Do you have any idea?
That's a really good question. We never did that much training in terms of the psychology of these
Right.
fraudsters, which was something that I always was really fascinated with. Uh, my what my vision was always is we were a fraud team. We were the fraud
Yeah.
catchers. There were like a team of, let's just say, four of us, and we would meet every week and we would discuss, and then we'd work during the rest of the week. My image in my head is there were always the same version of us, just the fraudster version that would meet every week and be like, okay, how are we gonna defraud this bank? What are we doing? It's definitely interesting. They're definitely smart, is what I would say,
Oh
and they
yeah.
were definitely on the edge and doing some very clever tricks that they would do. I know one. I'm trying to think of some of the examples that we had caught or that people had talked about. One of them was a lot of what fraudsters would do is they would order things and have them shipped to the address next door. So it wasn't
Yeah.
connected to their direct address. That was one thing. There was a lot of we we called them. Someone would apply for a bunch of different um, would do a bunch of different applications, like 10,000 applications or something like that, and with the hope that one of them would get through. And
Yeah.
all they need is that one to get through. So there was like a whole kind of strategy game to it that we were playing
Mhm.
with them, where we were trying to use the historical data to try to catch them out. But in general, they leave fingerprints,
Yeah.
and so our goal was always just to figure out what the fingerprints were.
Yeah, and that's what we saw too. The fingerprints that we noticed at Mercado. So the majority of these orders that we were having trouble with were in New York and Chicago. Makes sense. They're really big cities. So, and for both of those cities, they would frequently use the same addresses. But what was most notable about them was that they would use addresses for really big apartment buildings, um,
Uh-huh.
without apartment numbers. So it
Uh-huh.
would just say, oh, um, this number on, I don't know, 110th Street, uh,
Uh-huh.
on Manhattan or something. And unfortunately, most of them were in specific neighborhoods. So like for Mercado in New York, a lot of the orders were in the Bronx, which
Uh-huh.
we felt bad about because we were like, well, do we block orders to the Bronx? We don't want to block orders to the Bronx. But it was, and so we ended up we would flag any orders that were going to the Bronx that didn't have like an apartment number, and then we would just like check those and see.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, yeah, it was typically like very location based. You could tell we knew what neighborhoods we typically worked in, that most of our clients were in. And if there was something that was really out there, that was a big sign. But the other big sign was just the items that they were getting. It was usually many, many, many items of like big ticket, expensive things. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, it was like an incredible amount of toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
We used to not have an easy way to delete toilet paper or things like that from people's carts, which meant that for my first 3 days at Mercado, I was deleting toilet paper from people's orders.
Oh God.
Hundreds of items of toilet paper from hundreds of orders.
Oh
It
man.
was pretty bananas. And then I remember during the summertime, it was entirely ice cream based. It was people wanted Haagen-Dazs ice cream, they wanted Ben and Jerry's ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
and which I thought was bizarre, but also kind of understood the concept of. And then alcohol was a big thing too. People would buy like the most expensive bottles of liquors and stuff
Mm-hmm.
and have them delivered. It was very interesting to see the seedy underbelly of grocery delivery, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
It's a
lot of
crazy
fun.
world there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking forward and you're talking about preventing fraud at different types of organizations, what are the things that you're typically thinking about, especially as this world with generative AI is rapidly changing?
Yeah, so the one thing that I thought about a lot was there's kind of two concepts in data science. One is synthetic data generation, and the other one is reinforcement learning. Um, and so synthetic generation is basically when you have a model that is built to synthetically to create information that looks like the information you fed into it.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes without having any direct inputs at the time. So you just say, the classic example is, I'm sure you've seen the ones where people can like generate photos of you, like look
Yeah,
at a couple of images of you, generate a photo, or generate photos of
fakes,
cats,
things
things
like
like that.
that. Yeah.
So a lot of people think of it in terms of image generation, but you can actually apply it to tables, to like tabular data or text. And so one thing I was looking into was synthetic generation of applications. And so trying to synthetically generate different applications um, for a credit card or for a loan, and leveraging AI to make those appear more and more real over time.
Mm-hmm.
And then using things like reinforcement learning, which is this concept of information. It's basically you take the the successes and the failures of a predictive model and you feed it back into the model to make it even more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's like a model that builds on itself. And
Mm-hmm.
so the idea being what likely is happening and is going to happen continually in the future is fraudsters are going to basically leverage AI to make more and more convincing applications to get to commit acts of fraud, and then
Yeah.
they're going to feed their successful fraud attempts back into their algorithms to make them even better. And so that's going to be like this circle, and so we have to come up with this counter circle to basically counteract that. So
Yeah.
what one of the things I was looking into is trying to basically simulate that on the inside so that we would have kind of what I would call these like fake cat applications that would look like what we picture those would look like to try to catch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then when you think about email fraud and how many, yeah, being able to train on what are the emails that people are most likely to click on the links for.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Mhm.
security and stuff like that. Oof, yeah, I think, all right, it's hard to hear all of this sometimes and remain optimistic about the future of AI, right? And I suppose, you know, at the end of the day, we're at the same spot that we've always been, where hackers are always getting better, fraudsters are always getting better, but people who are fighting them are also always getting better. So
Mhm.
perhaps the day to day hasn't changed, but I'm hearing this and it sounds a bit overwhelming, right? Of these guys are getting so good and now they're using AI to get even better every step of the way.
This show has been brought to you by Cirrus North. Does your organization need a better partner for cloud, DevOps, security, and compliance? Cirrus North is a team of software professionals with a passion for cloud solutions, DevOps, automation, Kubernetes, and streamlining complex business problems. They are 100% US based in Minnesota and Chicago, have deep experience supporting mission-critical technology operations in highly regulated environments, and have delivered success for startups and for companies on the Fortune 5. Interested? Reach out to the team at cirrusnorth.io. That's cirrusnorth.io. Thanks, Cirrus North.
How optimistic are you about AI these days? How are you feeling about AI these days? And especially like as somebody who's in this space where, you're constantly trying to tackle people who are trying to take advantage of different systems.
Yeah, I think I'm more optimistic than most people, but I think you kind of have to be in the field to like work on things
Yeah.
like that. My thought is always it's kind of um, the good news is the tools are available to everyone. So a lot of it comes down to, are you willing to adapt to the change?
Right.
Because whoever the competition is going to do the same thing. If we don't adapt, then another company is going to come in and beat us.
Mm-hmm.
The fraudsters will beat us. The whoever else is going to be there is going to come in with a faster, better, more useful algorithm or a more useful method. So I'm fine with I kind of like the idea of continuously trying things, continuously building on it. I see it as more of a interesting adventure than anything else, and
Yeah,
so
like a
that's how
challenge. Yeah.
yeah, I think we often get scared of the unknown, but I'm ADD, so for me it's like the idea of, oh, we just do the same thing every year. That's almost to me more scary than that. Like I remember
I
reading,
mean, same.
I remember reading at IBM, I think this was IBM, that they could just forecast almost to the exact dollar amount how much they would sell every year because it was so consistent. And like I think it was in like the 50s or the 60s, everything was so consistent that they just would, it wasn't a question of how much they just printed out how much they were going to sell because they just knew and it didn't change that much.
Yeah.
Now, these days, like things are changing so rapidly
Oh my gosh, everywhere, in
that
every category, every moment of the day. Yeah.
yeah. So I think being able to handle that change and seeing it as good and not as a threat is really important. And that's something I kind of always tell myself, always kind of coach to myself is change is good.
Yeah.
You have to embrace it. Um, and
Mm.
I try to be on the forefront of it. That's kind of my thing is I try to be as proactive as possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that somebody like you is having a lot of fun with this rather than somebody who is like dismayed every time that somebody is able to like break through with like a new fraud system. But I think it makes sense. I feel like in roles like yours or like in your position, like it's very easy to kind of gamify the situation because you literally are like trying to beat a bad guy every day,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
think, yeah, because I tend to be more motivated by like, I don't know, I guess more optimistic outcomes. Like, wow, we were able to accomplish this. But I suppose it's the same thing. I'm just not used to, actively trying to defeat somebody every time I go to work.
Yeah, it's it was an
Yeah,
interesting role.
for sure. Okay. So, what are things that you think companies should be thinking about when they're building, when they're breaking into building new generative AI programming systems, whatever, for the very first time, but also trying to build safely, good AI governance, good AI security, making sure that you don't run into these types of fraudulent issues? What are things that you think executives maybe aren't paying attention to that they need to be keeping an eye on?
I think I think there's kind of a couple different areas you can focus on. I think the first step is you really have to start with the problem and
Mhm.
think about, do you really, really, really understand the problem space well? And I
Yeah.
find oftentimes people don't, and it's more like AI for AI's sake. And like
Right.
something to keep in mind, AI has no obligation to make you money. It has no obligation to solve. The customer doesn't care about a technology; they care about their problems. And so really having that lens in mind of like, I always think from the problem first. And then I look at the tool set and I say, okay, what from these are going to solve it? And I find oftentimes people do more of the opposite of we need AI, let's just build a bunch of stuff. I would say problem first, data second. And so what do you have available? What information can be used? What information are you trying to understand? What information is available? And then you start to look more at the AI of, okay, here's how it would kind of look, and here's how I might build something.
Yeah.
I think keeping that in mind, I think also front loading the risks is very important. So like what we'll often do with clients is we'll have like a lot of sessions to understand their problem and basically make a list of kind of the constraints that the problem's in. And then we'll brainstorm solutions and ideas and go over with them and say like, here are the different things we're thinking about. And the client might say, I don't want that, I don't want that, but I do this particular thing I'm really interested in. And I find that's great. And we have this thing that they're interested in. But the next step is it's really important, I think, even before going too much into building, is to really focus on what could go wrong with that. Like what might kind of fall apart. What are the assumptions we're making as we're building this? And I think that's a really important step. I used to have like a template I would use whenever I was working on a data science project, where I would like write out the problem, and I had a section where I'd be like, what are the assumptions you're making out of this? If this goes wrong, what could happen? And actually just taking the time to write that out before you get too deep in the project, I find to be very helpful. Because oftentimes it's very easy to think about the upsides. It can be harder to think about the downsides.
Yeah. One of our guests a few weeks ago, I don't know if you know John Haggerty, talked about making pre-mortems instead of, in addition to postmortems. So
Yes,
it's like, what is everything that could possibly go wrong whenever building a system like this? And I
absolutely.
thought, yeah, really liked how he framed
Yeah.
that.
I also think another factor of that in terms of the solution itself is to really focus on simplifying whatever you're building. And I find that is something that's very counterintuitive, particularly for engineering types.
Yep.
I want to build this very fancy, complicated solution. And oftentimes it can be a lot more simpler. You just want the simplest version. Well, it's some people call it like minimum effective dose. What is the simplest thing I can actually build that will solve this? And that's what you should focus on, especially when the uncertainty is really high. But I found that's not the common mindset in a corporate environment. It's like it's not that much. It's more like we got to really invest in this. It's like no, let's just try it. Let's just try it.
Yeah, yeah. I find that
Yeah.
a lot with new startup founders, especially if they come from a more corporate environment. It's like, hang on a second. We understand that you want to build a completely holistic product that is like fully formed and everything, you know how absolutely everything works and it's like super complicated. We really don't need to do that yet. We really need to make sure that anybody likes your product in the first place.
Yes.
Make sure that you have product market fit, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, and there's something beautiful. I think it's very important to kind of see the beauty in simplicity, and I think that's hard for some people,
Yeah.
um, to see that the simple thing is the beautiful thing, and I think some people struggle with that. I remember reading a biography about Checkpoint, which is this really successful company from the Middle East,
Yeah.
and they were doing identifying phishing emails, like if documents were phishing documents. And they had looked at all these really complicated solutions um, to figure out how to determine which documents were phishing documents or not. And they figured out a way that was 100% effective. Can you guess what it is that they did?
I think maybe it's probably like a really specific detail. Um,
So it's like a Word document.
just tell me.
It's fine.
I think
So they,
I think I got lost. I think I got lost.
so they would basically just more or less just take a screenshot of the document and
Yeah.
then send a screenshot through. So it would just be a duplicate of the document, but didn't actually contain any of any potential for malware or anything like that. It was
Yeah.
just it just was a screenshot that captured the important information and sent it to the user.
Yeah.
But the actual document itself that could have had malicious data in it never actually got to the person, but the person always got the
Interesting.
information they needed. So they didn't need to do this complicated thing to figure out, is this a real document? Is this a fraudulent document? It's all filtered out.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting.
That's wild.
Mhm,
Oh my gosh. I love it when there's simple solutions to
mhm.
what seems to be an overcomplicated problem.
There
Yeah.
was this really interesting um, re book called Rage, and they had a story in it about chess players.
Hmm.
Um,
I
this
love
was
this
like,
book, by the way.
oh yeah,
This is one of my favorite books of all time.
yeah.
I don't remember who
So
it's by, but it's Range. It's all about why generalists are going to be better than specialists.
yes,
And yes,
yes.
it's literally one of my favorite books. I'm so glad you
Absolutely.
brought this up.
One of my favorite too.
Please
So
continue.
everyone, so if you want to be good at AI, read it. I would highly recommend it. But they have a story in it about right when these chess playing robots came out. I think this was after Gary Kasparov got beaten by it. And it was this thing that everyone thought that humans would forever be the best at chess, not a machine.
Mhm.
And then Gary Kasparov could have like been frustrated or mad or whatever, but his thing was, this beat me, but because there are certain things it's better at than me. But
Mhm.
there's also things that a human can do that it can clearly do better than this chess playing robot. So they did this very interesting experiment where they had a tournament, and the tournament was paired tournaments. So it was groups of two
Mhm.
competing against each other. And there were three different types of groups. There were groups where it was two humans, groups
Mhm.
where it was two robots, and groups where it was one human and one robot.
Mhm.
And they did this tournament, and can you guess which team ended up winning?
Oh, the human and the robot.
Yes.
Yes.
And what was most interesting about that is it was not the humans that were the best individual chess players that
Mhm.
ended up doing well. It was the humans that were good enough at chess to understand the strategy of it, as opposed to like the deep, deep memorization, but good enough to understand strategy and let the robot take care of the tactics. And so there was this, they called them like centaurs of like the symbiotic relationship where they were able to leverage the best of what makes them human and match that with the best of what the machine had. And I think that's where AI is likely headed, is it'll let us be even more human and leverage the best of who we are as a person. So
Yeah.
so leverage the best of who Caroline is as a person and have that working with the best of an AI like ChatGPT to come up with even better things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm finding is the case, like with everything. Well, not everything. I think there are some things that AI is just not particularly good at the moment. Maybe they'll get better
Mhm,
at it later. But I'm finding like the people who are really enthusiastic about testing AI out and figuring out how can I make this work to the best of its abilities, and what are ways that
mhm,
maybe I can trick it or convince it to perform better by doing things in unexpected ways. My
mhm,
husband is such a nerd, and we love him for that. He's in
mhm,
a Dungeons and Dragons group,
mhm,
and he decided to make some sort of animal character. I don't quite know what was going on. And so he asked Chat GPT 4.0 if he could create this character for him. It was like supposed to be a cat or something, like a cat human. And it kept like adding like a head of hair, like human hair on top of the
mhm,
cat. And he was like, "Oh, can you please remove the human hair?" And the app would be like, "Sure," and then it would still be there. And
mhm,
um, he was like, and he kept arguing with it, and then the app was arguing back, like, "No, there's no human hair on this cat." And he's like, "Yes, there is. This is
mhm,
so annoying." And I ended up saying, "Dave, ask ChatGPT to make the cat bald."
mhm,
And he goes, "What?" And he's like, "I'll make it hairless." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Just tell it to be bald instead and see if it
mhm.
works." And he did, and that removed the human hair.
Oh God.
And so, it's like how sometimes it's how do you have to trick your AI into working with you, and that always
Yes.
makes me
They're,
giggle.
they're good in some ways and they're terrible in other ways. There was a really funny example I saw where someone asked it to generate an image of salmon swimming up a stream, and it was like the fillets of like the blocks of salmon coming up the stream. It's like it doesn't. That's not what I'm.
I know. I love it when that happens. I
Yeah.
currently I've been using my ChatGPT to try to help me figure out what to do next for job hunting and like my career and whatever. And it is just very aggressively pushing me to be like an AI thought leader, content creator. It's like really dead set on this. And and, and the other, and it's so funny because like all of the other, like parents and stuff in my life are like, why would you do this? And I'm like, chat, why do you keep telling me to do the thing that everybody else says I shouldn't be doing? They're like, well, these are all the reasons. And it like put together this whole report. And I'm just sitting there being like, okay, are you right? Or are like, or are you trying to make me happy? Like, are you trying to impress me in a way? Or are you telling me something about myself that I don't know? It's been very funny to see.
Yes. Yes. It's hard to know. It wants you to just promote it, is what.
I guess so. Yeah, it's just trying to get more attention and thinks I could be a good vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's wrap with this. I'm curious if you have any advice for anyone trying to break into your space. So, working in AI, machine learning, in fraud, or in consulting, what advice would you give to people, maybe students who are up and coming right
Um, I think there's kind of two aspects that are kind of opposites of each other, which I
now?
would say is you want to make sure that you're playing in the beginning.
Mm,
Like the more fun the data, the more you're genuinely interested in the data you're working with, the easier it'll be to learn. So
yeah.
if you're working with data that's really boring to you, then it's just going to be hard to,
Mm,
particularly when you're still trying to figure everything out. It can just be hard. Um, at the same time, I think you want to try to really push the hardest parts of data science first and like front load those. And so you're working on the hardest things. So you have kind of this foundational skill set that can push you forward. And I find oftentimes people focus on like the easier sides first, of like uh, it's I'm just generating an algorithm or something really simple or just like examining already code. But the harder you're working on things in on the front of it on the front end, the easier it'll be longer term in terms of like making sure you really understand how to code, you really understand the math underlying it, you really understand how the models work. You have that really strong foundation combined with having that combined with just playing and having fun with data sets and not trying to be that person. It's like I'm just messing with this data. Let's see what I can come up with. La di da da. Like you need that, but you also need to like really focus and understand the algorithms and be able to articulate it to people and things like that. You need both those.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed having you. And thank you, everybody, for watching this show. If you like this show, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, depending on where you are watching or listening to this. And if you are interested in learning more about Nick or what he's doing at Ride the Wave, Nick, how should people reach out to you?
Yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. That's primarily where I am. I'm Nick Capaldini. Capaldini, Carolyn, at
Capaldini.
yes, Capaldini at on LinkedIn. Just search that. I'm the only one.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Listen, it helps if you're the only one, man.
Yes,
It makes my life
Capaldini. Yes.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Nick Capaldini. Thank you so much, everybody. And we hope that you're having a fantastic day. Bye, everyone.
This show has been brought to you by Cirrus North. Does your organization need a better partner for cloud, DevOps, security, and compliance? Cirrus North is a team of software professionals with a passion for cloud solutions, DevOps, automation, Kubernetes, and streamlining complex business problems. They are 100% US-based in Minnesota and Chicago, have deep experience supporting mission-critical technology operations in highly regulated environments, and have delivered success for startups and for companies on the Fortune 5. Interested? Reach out to the team at cirrusnorth.io. That's cirrusnorth.io. Thanks, Cirrus North.